In this time of the turning of the ashes, the ember of the old, with prayer, with unity, with hearts and minds joined, flickers and springs to life, then roars with a mighty power that ushers in the new sun, the new time. Emerging from the darkness of this hour, we look about us, bathed in light, shadow, and a small pool at our feet, always present. Crystalline truth, won at great price. In the loving embrace of the hill of Chartres, of the power imbued to we, the practitioners and people who love this place, that power from time primordial to now has always enveloped and renewed those who come to put their feet on this place, standing tall as the oak, reaching to the heavens, roots deep in the earth. We come, we prepare, we renew, and in this moment are. And now we step forward. Ah, Mama, Ua Noa.
Thank you, Apila. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, everyone, for joining our call today as we begin 2021, which in many ways feels like an extension of 2020. Someone made the comment that the events of January 6th were really December 37th, as the scourge of 2020 continues to encroach upon all our lives. And therefore, it's particularly important, I think, and with great open-heartedness and gratitude for our community, that I want to welcome you today. We've been saying for some months, as we traverse the pandemic that has afflicted all of us everywhere in an unprecedented way, forced lockdowns and social distancing and masks at all levels, that the most important thing for all of us personally and in community is to establish coherence and the intimacy that loving one another can only bring. And that the deepest love is the love of the mother, and that the mysticism of the wisdom school, of the Chartres Academy, is how we continue to deepen our reverence, our adoration of the great feminine, so that she holds us each and every day as we all seek to navigate a world that is truly gone off the rails. Particularly here in the United States, as we saw on the day of the Epiphany, January 6th, which was a holy day in the Russian calendar and has been a holy day of Epiphany for centuries. The Congress of the United States was to meet and certify, finally, the election of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as president and vice president of this country. And Donald Trump and his minions in the US Congress and the Senate and the House of Representatives unleashed a mob that took over the Capitol building in an unprecedented way. Hasn't been since 1812, when the British stormed the Capitol in the War of 1812 and burnt much of Washington to the ground, that there has been an insurrection, an attempted coup here in the United States, orchestrated by the president. And as you've all seen from the news, once again, our democracy bent, but it did not break. And before the day was over, into the early morning hours of January 7th, both the House of Representatives and the Senate reconvened and certified the election results of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. How that's now going to unfold over the next days leading up to the inauguration in January 20, we'll see. There's ongoing calls for violent unrest from the same cadre of people who stormed the Capitol building. And so we thought, as we begin the year, it is crucially important to understand the larger container of the planetary alignments that, as we all know, have such a profound effect on human behavior, human attitudes, and the course of history. You'll recall that Lynn Bell, who's been our astrologer from the very beginning of the Chartres Academy, spoke in December about what was going on with Jupiter and Saturn in conjunction with the solstice. And she indicated that the next milestone was going to be around January 6th. Well, sure enough, that happened. And so we wanted to have Lynn join us once again and just share with us, what's happening now. As you all know, perhaps this weekend, Saturn and Jupiter and Mercury are in conjunction, and Lynn will explain the larger matrix of configuration that is affecting human behavior and attitudes. So Lynn, I want to welcome you. And after Lynn speaks, Banafshe will comment, and then we'll have a PowerPoint so that we can, as we contemplate world events, hold them within the context of the planetary alignments. We can return to Chartres. That is our sanctum sanctorum. That is the one place on this planet where the feminine and the mother tellurgically is the most potent. So we're going to return to the mother. And then beyond that, we'll talk about some of the events and courses that we have in store as we continue to build our community within the container of the Chartres Academy as we witness and hold together unfolding world events. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Lynn, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. As always, a beautiful opening, and happy birthday last week. Well, watching the events of last week, one of the reasons that I had mentioned January 6th when I spoke last time to all of you was that January 6th was the day that Mars, which has been in Aries for nearly 7 months, because it was retrograde, and a very unusual retrograde, because it retrogrades least often in Aries, its own sign. And Mars was about to change signs that day. So when a planet is at the last degree of a sign, we call it the anorectic degree. It's a critical degree, because everything that's been set in motion, it's like something can't be stopped anymore. And at the moment the capital was breached on the 6th, Mars was at 29 degrees, 55 minutes Aries. And during the siege, it entered Taurus. Now, as it entered Taurus, it squared, or actually before, it squared the degree of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. I know this is a little bit technical, but one of the things that we astrologers always look for is that moment when a planet is going to reactivate a major configuration of the year. So Mars was activating the major configuration, but through a difficult aspect, through an aspect of challenge of Mars will be in Taurus until March 4th. And it has a lot to do with what's mine, my territory, what belongs to me. This place belongs to me. This is our place, as people said. I was struck reading something yesterday by one of the people who had entered the building, who said, or who hadn't entered the building, but who said there wasn't room, I couldn't get up there. He said, but there were enough of us, we could have taken that building down stone by stone. Now, as you know, because I think I mentioned this last time, the big configuration for all of 2021 is Saturn square Uranus. And Saturn square Uranus, these two planets are not friendly, just like Jupiter and Saturn aren't entirely friendly, but when they come together, they bring something new into being. But I've given a couple of talks around these configurations called the Battle of the Titans, and about the war between the generations. In both Jupiter and Saturn and Uranus, they represent different generations of gods. And in Greek mythology, Saturn deposes Uranus and Jupiter deposes Saturn. So you have this reversal. However, between Saturn and Uranus, it's quite violent. It's quite extreme. When Jupiter, you'll remember the myth that Saturn had this, because he deposed his own father. There was a prophecy that one of his own children would depose him. And so as each of his children were born, he swallowed them. So, you know, Saturn in astrology represents something that kind of contains us, or that doesn't give us room to live. But one of his children, Jupiter, was left outside, and when he was raised in secret, replaced with a stone. Eventually, one day, gave Saturn something to drink, and he vomited up the children he had swallowed. Now, so we could say that what we're going through, so sometimes when Saturn and Jupiter conjunct, we also have a process like this, where the war between the old and the new that's engendered by that, like the battle for supremacy lasted, it's said in Greek mythology, 10 years, which could mean anything. 10 years is just a symbolic amount of time. So as we can see, even with just Jupiter and Saturn, there can be this battle. Now, what happens immediately is Mars, as it enters Taurus, it begins to resonate with Uranus, which is at 6 degrees of Taurus. And on January 20th, one of the reasons that astrologers have been really concerned about the inauguration is that because on January 20th, the Mars-Uranus conjunction is exact, and Mars and Uranus together indicates revolutionary activity. It indicates the possibility of violence or explosions. But again, you'll remember from studying with Rick Tarnas that he suggests that these cycles are in orb for a much longer period of time, so that he gives 15 degrees to aspects between the major slow-moving planets. So from Rick's point of view, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction of last year is not really over. They're only 6 degrees apart. It's true, they are in different signs. But one of the reasons that makes January so critical is not just that Mars is moving to conjunct Uranus on the 6th, but as it does that, it will square Saturn and square Jupiter, and Mercury, meanwhile, already squared Mars. So there's a huge amount of action from Mars, the god of war. And Mars is actually challenging the authority and the structure of Saturn, and the new order represented by the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. So there is an energy of uprising described by Mars-Uranus square Saturn-Jupiter, and there's a series of activations. Another really important date in January is the 14th, because Uranus makes a station. It's retrograde right now, and it changes direction, and that always gives a lot of power to a planet. You could say it's stationary in the sky. And Uranus is the revolutionary planet, but Uranus can be reactionary. Donald Trump has Uranus conjunct the sun. Hitler had Uranus conjunct the ascendant. We associate most often Uranus with radical change and freedom and breakthroughs in awareness and consciousness. But there is a real battle going on, and the battle is not finished. That's what the astrological aspects tell us. Another key date is January 13th, and for those of you who are in the States, that's January 12th, because it's the new moon in Capricorn, and the new moon is conjunct Pluto, but it's also on the degree, almost the same day of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction of last year. So we could say that the lunar cycle that goes from January 12th, January 12th, 2020 was the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And January 12th, 2021, there's a new moon, in a way recapitulating. So yes, December 27th or December, we might have December 42nd or something. We're 2020, but this next lunar cycle is therefore critical because it's reactivating the dark subterranean dismantling of structures that we saw much of last year. And as we can see, so even though as anticipated, we have the vaccines, which, are remarkable whether you want to take them or not, whatever you think of them, they're a remarkable collaboration within the scientific paradigm and the scientific community. So there is a way out. At the same time, there's another wave of new forms of COVID coming from the UK and South Africa that are more contagious and affecting different members of the population. So we have this, it's almost like we're not out of the den, all right? So the Great Mother, as Andrew tells us so often, the Great Mother also has her manifestation as Kali, and she has her manifestation, her dark manifestation. She gives birth to, she also gives birth to us through suffering and through a difficult passage, and sometimes through a dark night. What happened on January 6th, as we look at it, it's, I think, personally reviewing it or listening, it was worse than it might have initially looked. And there are a lot of questions that can be asked about who's on whose side. So if things can be taken in, if someone can in some ways take control, the positive, one of the positive aspects of the next few days is that Jupiter is now between Saturn and, Mercury is now between Saturn and Jupiter. And Mercury will conjunct Jupiter just as the new moon is forming. And that Mercury conjunct Jupiter could be truth coming out, or people speaking out, in people being made conscious of things. It could indicate a positive turn in the collective mind. It could be good news. This is just before the new moon. So there is a chance that what we saw on the 6th means that people will see what's coming, what's been planned, and be able to plan for the next steps. I don't want to like hit you over the head with the technical aspects of astrology, but basically because a lunar cycle runs 28 days, and after the new moon we have the full moon, and the full moon, which will be in Aquarius Leo, will also square Uranus and Mars, and that's, I believe, January 28th. So it still activates the same critical issues. A lot of my colleagues have been saying the new year will begin February 11th, or maybe February 17th. And the reason, February 11th is actually Chinese New Year, February 11th or 12th, again, depending on where you are on the planet. And on that day, there's this spectacular conjunction of 6 planets in Aquarius. And here, I think the energy of the new is so clearly dominant, so clearly powerful, that it will sweep away the ghosts of Saturn, Pluto. However, what's really important to know is that Saturn and Uranus will square all of 2021, and Saturn and Uranus is a battle between the old and the new, between freedom and law, between what I want to do and what others want to make me do, between being bound or being released, and between really freedom and fear. The first exact square is February 27th. There's a second square on June 14th and a third square on December 24th. And there will be another square in 2022. It's not exact, but it's half a degree, so it counts, a little bit later. And I'll be, for those of you who are interested, I'll be doing a workshop on this on the 30th of January, which is a Wednesday, I believe. No, not a Wednesday, a Saturday. That's right. On the 30th of January, I'll be doing a workshop on Saturn square Uranus for Astrology University. And I'll talk about it on a more personal level, how you can work with this energy. And it will be really for astrologers, but anyone who watches will get a lot of benefit from it. So one of the things is, one of the images I've used for Saturn square Uranus, and I might have mentioned this last time, is an image from a tarot deck where the card of strength is a very large woman trying to hold up a pillar, and the pillar is cracked and chipped at the bottom. And that this is where we are. We're trying to hold on to the world that we know at the same time that so many events and so many things that are happening are telling us that the world must change. So are we able, will the whole thing fall down? Will it become unrecognizable? Will we be looking, will it be brought down stone by stone? Because that can happen when the Uranian forces go up against what's been built before. It can come crumbling down. The Saturn-Uranus cycle is connected to our earth changes and financial reversals and many other things. It doesn't mean there's nothing positive in 2021. I just want to reassure you, but these forces, we could say, of the law of what holds our world steady and what obliges our world to change will be in a constant friction or in a regular wave of friction that will be reactivated many times during 2021. So I am not convinced that we are out of danger. And whatever we can do to accelerate the necessary containment of destructive forces, like write your congressman, whatever you can do. Meditation is great, prayer is great. And I think we are all, as Andrew would say, we are all children of the mother. And we will turn to her to say, stay safe. I think that's good for today, don't you, Jim?
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you for the insights you bring to us. May we use the positive aspects of this time, as you mentioned, to uncover what is really going on and not turn away. I'm so reminded of what happened in my country, Iran, where there was a coup and a takeover. And I pray that a similar thing doesn't happen in the United States. The people who stormed the Capitol, very similar in energy to the people who orchestrated the coup in my country, Iran, in 1979 and brought down the regime. And they continue to rule. My prayer is that that doesn't happen here in the United States. And I'd like to share with you as a soothing, healing balm, images of Chartres that were sent to me by a friend in Chartres. They're recent, they're from the last Christmas in December, 2020, I mean. So just a stroll down the streets of Chartres and looking inside the cathedral, the procession and the events that happened during Christmas. I do have to say too that things are different because of the pandemic, but still it would be it's beautiful to see, I'm sure. So I'm going to ask my dear friend Ruth to also play music for us as we look. Thank you.
Thank you, Banafshe. Thank you, Lynn. Claire Hiles just put in our chat, panelists, I think, Claire, you meant to send it out to everyone, the Hail Mary prayer, which I think is worth reading so that we can just reflect on the power of Mary in this moment. Hail Mary, full of grace. The Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and in the hour of our death. Thank you, Claire, for offering that into our midst at this moment. I want to just make a few comments on what Lynn has laid out, just so that we're holding the widest possible context for what it is that we're all collectively experiencing, particularly now that we know that Saturn and Jupiter are going to be squared for all of 2021. And so we're going to have this conflict built into the energetic qualities of what all of humanity will be experiencing. You think of the pandemic and COVID rates, again, particularly in the United States, are setting new records on almost a daily basis. 4,400, over 400 people died just yesterday. And California, Arizona, New York are the highest COVID rates in the world. Hospitals are overflowing. ICU beds are taken up. And there's stories of patients being put in the gift shops and in the conference rooms of hospitals, and ambulances actually being turned away. I think what we need to all take in is that 2020 was not an anomaly, but the beginning of what will probably be the most consequential and turbulent decade in human history, as the accumulated transgenerational trauma comes to a head, as climate change continues to spin out of control, as governments prove themselves ineffectual in coming together in any kind of meaningful way, as our ecology continues to be eroded. One of the seminal facts that emerged out of 2020 was the World Wildlife Fund report that in the last 50 years, 70% of all the biodiversity in the world, the animals, the plants, the fish, the birds, have disappeared. 50% of all the forests. So right at this moment where humanity is being challenged in unprecedented ways and at a tipping point where the damage has been so severe, the very ecology that has been supporting us and out of which we've emerged as a species is being destroyed at an accelerated rate. Climate change got worse in 2020 and continues to spin out of control. So I think all of us need to take in that turbulence will now be the norm. And in a hyper-complex world in which small events anywhere can ricochet through the global system and have major consequences everywhere. It can be a virus out of Wuhan, China, that initiates a pandemic. It can be the storming of the US Capitol that will now ricochet through, and how will other similarly aligned groups around the world take up this banner within the context of the basic conflictual nature of the planetary alignments throughout this next 12 months? That is our world. Scientific breakthroughs like the vaccinations, the inauguration of a new president. We're going to be in a world now where there's no boundaries between the categories. There's no neutral ground. We're all participating. And therefore, how we as a community come together to form an island of coherence in this raging sea of chaos that is getting more chaotic almost day by day. That is the single most important question any of us can take on. Nothing is more important than your coherence, our community's coherence. And there are many, many ways of cultivating that, as we all know. Every day on Humanity Rising, we start with a heart coherence meditation. And I would encourage everybody to begin to practice heart coherence. Just go on the Heart Math Institute website. It's as simple as breathing deeply and just listening to your heart in a spirit of gratitude that you are alive at this moment in history where every choice you make counts and contributes to the larger whole, which, as we emphasize every time we meet, is contained within the mother. And whether it's the activities of the Black Madonna shredding us for our own redemption, whether it's the Virgin Mary holding us, whatever we're going through, our community is dedicated to that holding within the womb of the mother, who contains us all, who births us all, who holds us all, and receives us again when we pass into another state of being. So I just wanted to personally just affirm everything that we're doing in our tiny little wisdom school, and to thank the staff and thank you as a community, thank the faculty for all we're seeking to contribute to just maintaining coherence as we all move through. And I was just thinking, Lynn, maybe the Wisdom School can co-sponsor your course with the Astrology University, and we can promote it. And, we want to have Lynn on all our community calls moving forward, because we need to stay attuned at this level, boy. We may not be astrologers, but we need to know that we're in a matrix that's influenced us. And I was thinking, Apila, this may be a time to resuscitate a dream group, because as you know, during these kinds of turbulence, during the pandemic, dreams come alive. I had a dream last night that still shakes my body. And we're turning to Brenda Crowther in March for an exposition on the I Ching, the oracle from deep antiquity of China, that I use as an advisor probably more closely than any other single thing, and have for many, many years. It's time for us to go deeply into the mysteries, everyone. And whether it's astrology or whether it's dreams or whether it's the I Ching, we're offering courses on the great books that can inform us. That's another way for us to take solace in these eternal verities that have inspired human beings across cultures and over time. And in a couple of weeks, we're starting a whole new course called Great Lives. Again, because we want to just inspire all of us that human beings in times of incredible transition and turbulence and change and anguish and conflict, human beings have emerged through that crucible to become so highly potentiated that they've changed the world and inspire us to the present day, so that we know whatever the afflictions that are besetting us, it is possible to use the very contradictions that are opposing us at every level as an alchemical cauldron and an alchemical fire that can burn away the dross and transform us into something more perfect, so that love can flow through us and transform us and everyone we touch into something more beautiful and a deeper alignment and harmony with the basic natural law that is at the core of our beings. And we're thinking about dialectica in July. I've been talking with Andrew and a number of people, and I think we're going to do it on the sacred marriage. How do we understand the opposites within the context of a marriage, the intimacy of a conjunctionis, as Jung would put it, complexio oppositorum. And in particular, we're going to look at male and female and gender and sexuality as they've been literally exploded as categories in our generation. And how can that inform us and inspire us, not only to endure the contradictions, but to live the coming together of the opposites, which, if not brought into union, can destroy us. This is not an academic exercise, my friends. The contradictions in the world today will rend this world asunder unless they're brought together in a deep, sacred marriage that allows a third thing, a birth, to emerge. And that's probably the widest metaphor of the world today. As Lynn was saying, something profound is breaking away, something profound is breaking through or being shattered. And our task is to somehow hold them together, not only in our own coherence, but in the coherence of our community, so that we can become midwives of a future that all of us know is possible if we would only open ourselves to both the contradictions and the transformations, so that the birth can in fact occur. That's the mystery of incarnation. That's the mystery and purpose of embodiment. The future never comes through abstraction, through vision, through hopes, through prayers. The future, as Rilke says, breaks through us. It has to be embodied, incarnated, or it never comes. And we've decided through lots of conversations that we're going to do some summer pilgrimages. Andrew's going to take us into South India, and Georgie is going to take us to Kailash. And so we're going to go to the east, again, holding the opposites, and see what the Tantra of South India and what the supreme majesty of the most sacred mountain in Asia can teach us, how they can hold us as we traverse a very potentiated year of contradictions. And then Banafshe and Anne and Ruth and Peggy are going to lead us in Madonna Rising. We're going to be having the rose circles, and we're going to be dedicating our next February session of our Chartres community into a fuller description of what the Madonna Rising and the rose circles will be all about. And then in the fall, one of the courses we'll be offering is going to be a narrative of love. What has love got to do with this? Well, love has got everything to do with this, because it's love and only love that unites all of our contradictions, all of the fractals that beset us, inspire us, and weave them together with an intelligence dedicated to making everything more beautiful, more in alignment with the larger whole out of which we came. And the narrative of love will look at what love means in the East and the West and the indigenous traditions and the sacred feminine traditions. It's going to be a beautiful, beautiful course. So I went a little longer than I thought I would. I just felt so inspired, Pila, by your opening invocation. It's just, you move my heart and the hearts of all of us so profoundly every time you invoke our sacred space. We are so honored to have a Pila with us. And Ruth, your music and your songs and the passion of your voice, so deeply inspiring. And Banafshe, your elegance and the way you hold the Madonna with your colleagues is so calming and so deep. And all of you in this community, each and every one of you, I always look at the participant list every time we start, and just the name, I recognize most of you and just feel such deep, deep love. Because this is the community that's going to see us through. This is the container that's going to hold whatever it is that history has in store, as we both pay the price for everything that we have done, all our cruelties to each other and to the environment. And also what's in store as we come together to birth what we know can be birth if we only embody the contradictions and allow the future to just burst through us. It's going to be a beautiful, beautiful year. I'm so excited. We can only live large now, everyone. There's no more hiding behind the bushes. There's no more living small. The only way through is to live large, hold hands, and practice heart coherence. So that come what may, we will endure as a light to the world. I believe that's our destiny. That is why we're here. We were born for this moment. We're here for a purpose. So I just want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today. And maybe, Ruth, if you could come in with a song, and then Apila, if you could give us a closing benediction, I think that will be sufficient for the day.
Sure. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, et benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria, Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis, ora pro nobis, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae.
In this time of conflagration, in this time of light and dark, we remember the promise of our Creator. With thanks for the first drink of water in the morning, life renews and we in it. Children of the waters, of the memory, of the wisdom, awaken. Stretch our arms, hold each other, and usher in this divine child, this new life. Thou, Mama, Noah. And now our prayers, our community are one. Amen. Yahweh.
Thank you, Apila. Thank you, everyone. This has been so heartful today. My heart is filled with joy. We'll see you again next month, and Hope that you can join us for great books or great lives and all the offerings that we have in store over this next year. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Ruth, Banafshe. Bye, everyone.
Blessings.